Well, thank you so much for talking to us. So, Carrie, great film. What made you decide that you wanted to go and participate in remaking it?
Well, the studio contacted me, and I at first looked at it as an opportunity, but thought, this there's been a version of this before, so I actually reached out to Brian De Palma, who I'm friends with, and he was incredibly supportive, so that was great. But the real test was picking up the novel. I was on a transcontinental flight, 15 hours, so I had a long time, and I just cracked it open. And I had read it as a kid and loved it, but I wanted to refresh myself, and it just blew my mind. Carrie White is the most extraordinary character, and Stephen King is such an amazing writer. You fall in love with her, you love the fact that she's a misfit and that she has a hard time in life, but you identify with her, and you want to see her succeed, but you also understand why she has such a hard time at school and why the kids, are tough on her. And then when she goes home, I fell in love with Margaret White, this religious fanatic who's created her own religion, who's kind of mentally ill, who's terrified of her daughter because her daughter represents, in her mind, sin and sexuality and her own desire. So she both loves her, but she's very punitive with her. I mean, the relationships are they're so rich, they're so entertaining, and they leap off the page. I mean, you can see it in your mind's eye when you're reading it. So it was just undeniably exciting. Add on top of it, I think it's a superhero origin story. I think it's an amazing revenge thriller. Great characters, great relationships, and it really comes to a combustible point where the mother and the daughter, fight to the death, where basically the kids get their revenge and Carrie gets her revenge. So it was just a great opportunity.
So this version of it's a little bit different. You did your own kind of flavor with it, and you kind of kept some parts from the book a little bit from the first one. So tell me how you did your own spin with this, within the way that you were able to.
Well, I think, like I said, because I loved Carrie White as a character, and I love the mother-daughter relationship, and I saw that that was really the heart and soul of it. When I went and did the adaptation, I just went back and focused on anywhere that I could bring up Carrie and bring up the mother-daughter relationship, I did, because I relate to it and I think that it drives everything. So, for instance, there's the new opening scene, which when I read in the book, which is from the book, I just was like, wow, this is amazing. This situates you right inside Margaret, who is kind of cut off from the world, doesn't know she's pregnant, thinks she has cancer, thinks she's dying, and ends up giving birth to something that she then wants to kill, but then falls in love with. So that to me was what a great place to start the movie and start their relationship. So then I worked on threading that through so that you constantly felt sort of the yin and the yang of it. It's like they always love each other, but they're constantly at odds. Then I looked at all the other characters and I thought, let me make sure that you believe and understand Sue and you believe and understand Chris, as Sue is trying to save Carrie and as Chris is amplifying her attacks at Carrie. I mean, in Chris's mind, why is Carrie getting all the attention? Why is her best friend siding with Carrie? Why is the principal siding with Carrie? Why is her own dad siding with Carrie? So that's a new scene that I put in, because I think the more invested you are in both the protagonist and the antagonist, the more engaged in the story you are.
So you kind of combine different versions of the Carrie story. You have the original, you have the book, and you also have kind of your own spin on things. Tell us a little bit how you took it your own direction.
Sure. So when I read the book and I fell madly in love with Carrie and with her mother, I realized that the heart and soul of the movie was a mother-daughter story, and that as much as I could, I wanted to bring that to life. So that was why in my adaptation I added that new opening scene, because when I read it in the book, I just was like, wow, this is phenomenal. And this really encapsulates the fact that Margaret is mentally ill. Margaret is kind of detached from the real world. Margaret believes that she's ill with cancer. And when this thing comes out of her in many ways, she wants to neutralize it and destroy it because it represents the fact that she's had sex and she's enjoyed it. And then she takes the knife to Carrie. What I loved is that she doesn't follow through on it. She stops herself. So it's the Abraham and Isaac story, but she stops. But it basically informs the entire movie. So in many ways, she keeps revisiting how she feels about Carrie until the climax, where I tried to the extent that I could make it a fight to the death. Margaret feels that Carrie has exposed her desire, and Margaret basically doesn't want to kill her daughter, but feels it's her duty, she has to. On the other side, I love that Carrie loves her mother, doesn't want to use her powers against her, but has to save herself. The other thing I saw in the material, particularly now looking at, the Marvel movies and the great superhero stories that we have, it was a superhero origin story. This is a story of a girl who feels very disempowered in the world, which most superheroes feel before they get their power, and all of a sudden she's got these superpowers. How amazing. So she's going to start exploring them. To the extent that I could, I amplified those scenes, and you see her discovering her powers, but if you notice, she has control, but then she doesn't have control. So I wanted to make sure that when she got to prom, we didn't know what was going to happen. It wasn't like she had mastery and whatever happened, she could handle herself. That wasn't the case. When she gets humiliated and her powers start leaking out, she's really freaked out. She starts to run. And she only comes back to protect Tommy. And then when grief takes over, right, you start to feel the powers coming out. Then I really thought, you know what, I'm going to make this more of a revenge tale. And of course, it always was a revenge tale, so I didn't add that as a new thing. But I really wanted to make it that you were deeply inside of it, and you really rooted for her to get revenge. And so that was really important to me.
So a lot of people, prom, big night for them. They do a lot of preparation. They want it to be just perfect. For you guys, getting that iconic scene down, you must have gone through a lot. Tell us a little bit about what you had to do to nail it.
We did. It was interesting. I thought, at first, it's not going to be a big deal. We just have a bucket, we put some blood, we put somebody under it, we dump it. Then my guys, special effects, that's what they do, the guys on set, guys or girls, they started giving me the test. They'd run in with their iPad, and I'd be in the middle of, working in prep and then shooting, and they'd show me these tests, and I was like, oh my God, this is not working at all. So they were trying 5, 4, and 3 gallons of blood, 5, 4, and 3 feet distance between the top and the person's head, and they were dumping these, these blood pores, and it was like sometimes it was missing, sometimes it was cascading across, sometimes it was behind, sometimes it was just this thick goop, sometimes it had bubbles in it, and I just was like, oh, this is really not working. But we would find certain things. Okay, let's try the 5. Okay, let's try the, the butterfly opening versus the cascade. So we were kind of limiting what we thought worked. And then all of a sudden one day what we thought worked just didn't work. And then I was told, well, you only have one shot with Chloe because she's a minor and she has restricted hours. And basically her clock starts the minute we pick her up, all through putting her in hair and makeup, shooting, and getting her cleaned up. So I was like, I can't possibly do this in one take, given that we're having such struggles. Well, you have to. So we got ready, and then we had a double, stunt double on the day, tested right before Chloe came in. And they invited a bunch of journalists, which I was just like, oh, you've got to be kidding. We did it, and it didn't really work. The journalists kind of thought it worked because they hadn't seen, right, how, basically the run of things. But it didn't really work. And then, they said to me, well, look, you can't look at Chloe. You can't tell her that it didn't work. Because they said, we know she's going to come on set, and she's going to say, so how did it work? And I can't lie to Chloe, so I just had to look away. And then it worked. And what's interesting, if you look close, the first dump, there's a spray. It looks like there's 2 dumps in what we shot. The head is kind of an umbrella. So the blood just goes like this. And you can see her looking at you through this umbrella of blood. And people ask me, is that CGI? And I said, no, that's actually a real blood dump. So that was first. And then they did give me another one. So we did 3 cameras each time, and the second time it's kind of a different constituency, and you can see if you look close that we're cutting between the 2.
Okay. And this movie and this story, great roles for women, great story for women. It must have been great for you because of your body of work kind of fits in with it. Just talk a little bit about the experience.
I mean, Carrie is an amazing it's an amazing book about women, which is extraordinary. Carrie's a great character. Her mother is a great character. Their relationship is amazing. Think about the fact that her 2 main relationships beyond her mother, well, the 3, there's Sue, who feels guilty for what she's done, is going to spend the movie trying to protect Carrie. Chris is pissed off that anybody's trying to protect Carrie, so she's going to wage war against her. There's a teacher at school, which is kind of another surrogate mother. That's an amazing relationship. You've got the girls, whenever they're with their boyfriends, whenever they're with each other, they're talking about Carrie, which is extraordinary. So it's a whole economy about women and about Carrie. You also have whenever the girls sleep with their boyfriends, which I think is rare. So whenever you have heterosexual sex, it's interrupted in order to talk about Carrie, which is pretty amazing. And you have a period on screen, right? and you have them dealing with the period. So I think the fact that you have female menstruation, and rather than, not showing it and, shying away from it, it's Stephen King puts it out there. So I think I think it's an extraordinary story that everybody can relate to, but I think it's amazing that you have such rich female characters, and that was a huge pleasure, getting to work with Chloe Moritz, Julianne Moore, Judy Greer, Portia Doubleday, Gabriella Wilde. I mean, it was amazing.
Well, great, and I can't wait to see the alternate ending that you guys have on the Blu-ray. So
I'm
thank you
very
much.
excited. It's very different than the theatrical, and that's very exciting that we have both out there.
Great. Well, thank you.
Thank you.